Hello YouTubers, welcome to the channel. I'm Wayne. Today we're going to jump into double stops on the mandolin and the importance of recognizing these shapes for the chord that they represent. I know that if you're under the bluegrass umbrella, there's a lot of playing that you could have done. Those kinds of moves on the fretboard where we're just intuitively using double stops, and that's great. I feel like most people somehow learn how to play before we ever really study the mandolin or whatever instrument it is that you've chosen. But there needs to be at some point a time when that, if you looked at everyone's pie chart and you have certain elements that make up your musicianship, a big part of that is going to be your experiences with other players, tunes that you fall in love with and you memorize that tune. You have a regional jam session that you go to, or a bunch of guys that you get together with just to play. So those experiences make up our musicianship, where we're just learning how to play without really studying. But there should be a piece of that pie that's also your learned musicianship. And if you have this intuitive ability to move around on double stops, today might feel like we fill in some spaces for you that were missing before. So I'm going to demonstrate this in the key of C. I like to base things on knowledge that most of us are going to have. This particular shape of Bill Monroe's chop chord, if I look at that, this root note of C, I'm going to think of that as the first note of the scale. And the scale shape that we typically can build things onto, let me demonstrate that. There's those 8 notes, 4 on top of 4. Really important shape that you should recognize. There's a video on here about the importance of that shape that's titled Most Important Shape, I think with a question mark in the thumbnail. But anyway, we're going to play all 8 of those notes with the ring finger where we're starting for this chop chord. So that's going to be the 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, 10th. Then the same thing happens on the D string. 5, 7, 9, 10. If you're not already doing it, follow along with me on your mandolin. We're taking this shape. Instead of using all 4 of our fingers, ring finger to each note. The reason for that is that we're building this double stop scale onto that familiar shape of the major scale. Now watch me add. In this particular case, it's a third. 1, 2, 3. It's a third above that root note, and that's going to follow me all the way across these double stops. Notice there, I have 3 frets between my fingers. That's going to make a lot of sense to you if you're already familiar with the chord scale. That shape is representing a D minor chord. I'm not going to worry about that as much today. These are just the shapes of the double stops. Now up to 5 and 9. Again, the big shape, 3 frets between our fingers. Now F at 7 and 10. And really notice that you have a dot at each one of those frets. That's what the inlay pattern is on the mandolin for. 7 and 10, that's F. Kind of file that away to get the note identification happening along with this. Now the same 4 shapes are going to happen on the 2 middle pairs of strings. 2nd fret A string, 5th fret D, representing a G chord. Then to A minor, 3 and 7. Then on to, this would be a B half diminished. That's what that double stop represents. Then we're back to C at the 7th and the 10th fret. So like the thumbnail says, we want to roam the fretboard with these shapes and begin to apply it. So we're going to learn that all over the fretboard. Any place that this happens when we get past the 7th fret, notice that's an E note, which is open here or closed here, and then we have a C note. So I can play that double stop in first position. The same way this F could also be played here. A note, F note, A note, F note. We want to really be, while we're learning these, each individual scale, anytime that we can take advantage of the open strings, we're certainly going to do that, because it's not always just going to be the closed position. And this reinforces the way all of this can become just intuitive on the fretboard. We're going to have to study a few of them first, but then that connection is going to become fairly solid for us. So from that C, just think about it. If you were here, the next shape is the bigger shape. There it is. That would represent the D minor. Another big shape is the E minor. Now we're in full octave above, playing an F, then a G. Right there, two of the smaller shapes are happening right beside of each other. You may not have noticed that when the shapes were actually moving on the fretboard. From this F, I could play the G here. Then I would notice that 4 and 5 chord are the smaller shapes, and they're right beside of each other. Just like if you were chopping rhythm, C, F, G. But when we play this pattern, F, G, we may not notice that, but that's really important to help you begin to make all of these calculations on their own, because that's the even bigger picture here, is being able to figure this out for every different scale using this really in-depth look at how all of this goes together with C is going to lead to your ability to do that. So anyway, after that F and G, then there's the A minor, then once again the B half diminished. I made that a triad, and then we're all the way on a high C. I don't really play the mandolin a lot past the 12th fret, but you certainly want to be able to make that calculation, and that gets us, the only thing left would be one interval lower than this C. You would actually have the B half diminished here, so we don't want to leave that out. Now listen to me play through and double the positions that I have an opportunity to, such as this F and this one. We want to study all of that. So it's B half diminished, C major, D minor, E minor, F here or here, then G, A minor, B half diminished. Two options again, C or C, then to the D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B half diminished, all the way up to C. So you can just say the chords out loud and play those shapes. Whatever exercise you may come up with, tremolo. Practice a tremolo technique as you play those, but you want this to be really solid with an awareness of the chords they represent, and that's going to open this up to happening for other scales and for you to just develop that connection to the fretboard to where you know what the next shape is going to sound like before you even play it. I want to demonstrate that if I use this position a lot. If I'm playing out of D, think about that chop chord and how many times we would flirt with that minor third note. I have a video about closed position blues scales. If not all of that is registering, you could check that particular video out and catch up a little bit here. But around that shape, if I were playing that all the way up here, you would recognize that interval as the second interval of this scale. Again, playing up here instead of in first position. If I want to roam the fretboard, as the thumbnail says, look how I just played over those shapes. Once my fingers landed on the 3rd and 7th fret, I'm back to D minor in this octave. So that's the kind of movement that's going to be available to you. And the way that we could improvise over these shapes, all of that will get talked about in more detail on other videos. But for now, if it's just this C scale, begin to memorize some of these double stops and recognize it as a chord scale. Other videos that I've done about that, I think I would have used this inversion of the chords, playing a C chord scale, where today it's more about associating those double stop shapes with the same exact overall approach of shifting those to different tonal centers and just beginning to play across all of this intuitively in a place that you really don't even think about it. It just kind of becomes automatic. So don't think that this is like this overwhelming job of doing this with all 12 of the notes that you would find in a chromatic scale. Before you would ever get that far, I want to believe that the connection would be there, especially if you have intuitively already played music where you used a lot of double stops before you even studied. If you had learned a lot of that, then that should create ambition to dig a little bit deeper into this. If you would happen to want some one-on-one Skype sessions, I'll always have an email in the description of these videos. I hope this helps.